Let's bring in someone with decades of diplomatic experience in the region. William Courtney is a former U.S. ambassador to Kazakhstan and Georgia and former U.S. State Department and National Security Council official for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasian affairs, and the current adjunct senior fellow at the RAND Corporation. Ambassador, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Asieh.
What do you make of Vladimir Putin's speech? What do you make of the tone and the message?
Last year's speech had a lot of show and tell about new missiles, including a video with a missile striking Florida. This year, it's less. I think he understands that the real issues now for his rule in Russia are domestic issues. In fact, the real story of this speech was the attention to problems of poverty, healthcare, demographic crisis in Russia. His popularity now, his public support is at an all-time low in recent years, 33.4% according to the latest public opinion poll.
Let me move on to the INF Treaty. Of course, U.S. announced it will leave the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, accusing Moscow, saying Moscow, in fact, has been violating this for years. Russia said it's suspending its own commitments, but if you ask the United States, they're saying they suspended their commitments a long time ago. Are we, in fact, Ambassador, closer to a very dangerous arms race?
We are not closer to an arms race. Russia has been violating the treaty for a number of years. The United States can't keep staying in the treaty if Russia is violating it, or otherwise we cannot get the Congress to approve any new arms control treaties with Russia. So pulling out of the treaty is something that was almost inevitable. It's not desirable, but it's inevitable.
Is there a chance during this 6 months the two sides can resolve their differences and get back into the treaty? Excuse me.
Russian authorities for years have been uncomfortable with the treaty. In fact, some years ago, the Russians asked us if it might be possible to end the treaty. So there's no likelihood that we will get back in to compliance, that the Russians will get back into compliance.
And Vladimir Putin today said, you know, he did not cross out the possibility of having some kind of discussion with the United States, but he was very specific, saying, we, the Russians, are not going to initiate any kind of conversation. Why is that, sir?
Well, we've had conversations with Russia. Over 30 conversations have been held with Russia on the INF violation. The Russians continue to violate the treaty. It's not a question of lack of conversation. It's a question that Russia is intending to violate the treaty.
So you're not at all concerned about a setback in terms of security for the United States, for its NATO allies?
There is a treaty, the START Treaty, which governs long-range strategic weapons. That's still in force.
Will it be after these tensions between these two countries?
Well, it'll be in force until 2021. It could be extended after that. That would be a desirable thing. But there's no prospect right now that either side is going to deploy thousands of new missiles that they otherwise would not have deployed. It won't be an arms race, but there will be arms competition.
You talked about the Russian economy earlier. What has been this impact of U.S. sanctions on Russia's economy?
Oil price drops and sanctions have had a huge impact on the Russian economy for the last 3 or 4 years. And an additional problem is that Russia's economy is becoming more and more state-controlled. Maybe up to 2/3 of the Russian economy is state-controlled, and state corporations are particularly inefficient and corrupt. So for the sanctions have probably had some impact, several percent of GDP on the Russian economy, but the Russian economic problem is much more serious.
And very quickly, Ambassador, I want to ask you a question about the personal relationship between the United States President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Former acting FBI director, in an interview with 60 Minutes, said that he believes, President Trump seems to believe Putin over his own intelligence agencies when it comes to North Korea, the same intelligence agencies that said Russia meddled in U.S. elections. Are you concerned at all, sir, that the President of the United States seems to have more confidence in Putin than his own intelligence agencies?
It's hard to know exactly what President Trump believes, but with regard to the intelligence agencies, their assessments are widely accepted, and U.S. policy toward Russia has continued to get tougher. It toughened under President Obama. It's continued to get tougher under President Trump, in great part because Congress is playing a more important role in our foreign policy.
We'll leave it there. Ambassador William Courtney, thank you so much.